Welcome to the Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, radio listeners via St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM, respective radio stations island-wide, Tel TV Plus Channel 15, and online viewers. I'm Rolika Roach, and welcome to the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, March 12, 2025. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Minister of Justice, Natalie Tacken, to address you. Minister Tacken, you have the floor.
Good morning, Rolika. Good morning to my fellow ministers and, of course, to the members of the media and to those watching, listening, viewing at home. A couple short updates on my end. I wanted to start with a quick reflection on the Heineken Regatta that was successfully concluded. The event proceeded smoothly and without any major incidents, highlighting the effectiveness of our security measures and the cooperation of all those involved. I wanted to take this moment to extend my sincere appreciation to KPSM and all other security personnel who played a crucial role in ensuring a safe and enjoyable event. Likewise, I want to commend the regatta participants, organizers, and the community for their cooperation and sportsmanship, which contributed to an event that continues to put St. Martin on the global map. Then I wanted to give an update on the incident at the prison last week, which has been far and wide in the media, both locally and abroad. What I want to be clear about again, and it's to echo what I said during the weekend in statements made to the press, what happened on Saturday is unacceptable. I recognize the seriousness of the matter, and I'm fully committed to ensuring that such incidents do not happen again. To this end, we've formulated a structured approach with short, mid, and long-term solutions that are aimed at improving security, the operational efficiency, and the overall conditions at the prison. The finalization of these plans is in progress, and I will provide more updates as we move forward, and I have confirmation of certain elements therein. Additionally, I want to reiterate also that where necessary, disciplinary measures will be taken to ensure accountability. The safety and security of both the staff and detainees remain my top priority, and we are working diligently to address the systemic challenges that we face up at the Point Blanche prison. Then I wanted to also give an update on the LBA process, Batch 13. Regarding Batch 13 and the ongoing process, the matter was as follows. Upon coming in, I was confronted with Batch 12 that had already been completed, and I received them just to basically countersign and hand them out. Each batch contains about 25 individuals. Upon handing out batch 25 or batch 12, what I realized in the discussions with those who were receiving their landsbesluiten was that almost everyone, maybe 20 of the 25, said to me, "Minister, I'll be objecting this because it's wrong." That being said, I didn't want to continue then with kind of selling people hot air. And I was like, I'm not going to then continue with a process where there's no buy-in on the side of the persons whose problems we're trying to solve. So that meant that we decided to have extra scrutiny when it came to batch 13 to avoid on the back end getting again that people are receiving landsbesluiten, but then having to object to these. So of the 25 files that we have under review, when it comes to batch 13, 10 of the 25 seem from our extra due diligence to be ready to be processed. 15 files, however, of the 25 will require further attention due to what we've already found to be discrepancies between the placement offer and the final salary scale or increment recorded in the draft national decree. These discrepancies arose because after issuing placement offers, it became clear that a full validation of personnel information was necessary. So we were doing an extra check. So I want to remind my critics out there that it's not just a matter of compiling people's files and saying, okay, now make a landsbesluit. there's a lot more due diligence that needs to go into this process to ensure that you have completely taken into account that person's employment history, make the necessary calculations. And with that full validation, what has been revealed is that there are several key issues. There are salary increases or adjustments that were not known to the placement committee at the time of the initial offer, so then we have a discrepancy. And then there are also cases where the initial placement offer resulted in a net salary deficit. We've all know that a person cannot go backwards when they are then placed. So what this meant is that it requires an upward adjustment to correct the discrepancy in the person's net salary. Another issue that we've identified is incorrect salary increment adjustments over an employee's tenure, which leads to miscalculations that then affect the final placement. I know that it's also been generally acknowledged among personnel that the placement offers may contain errors. However, I find it necessary to directly engage with the affected staff members to inform them of these corrections. Transparency and proper communication remain a top priority in ensuring that all personnel receive fair and accurate placements. To this end, I will be inviting these 15 individuals that we've identified where there are discrepancies. They'll be personally invited and be contacted throughout this week and next week to come into the cabinet so that we can go through these issues with them. Again, what I'm trying to avoid is that we end up in a process where for years we have employees that are fighting for their placements, receive a Landsbesluit that is still wrong, and then have to continue to fight for their placement. I want this to be a process where there is buy-in and where there's commitment and where people can be sure that when they receive that Landsbesluit that they don't have to be coming back again to object it. So if that means that we need to put in a little more hours, that it's going to slow down a little more, I think that that will bring more value to the employees because again, I can rush now and hand out LBAs. But if I know that you're going to end up having to object that and then you're going to be a year further before you receive the correction to that, then I think we're just as far away from home. So that's my brief update, at least when it concerns the batches. I want to again assure everybody that I'm in no way trying to delay this process. I take it very seriously. I understand the frustration of all the justice workers, and we're working diligently to do this the right way and to do this in a way that that resolves it once and for all. So that will be all for my statements so far, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Minister Tackling, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Minister of Public Health, Social Development and Labour, Richinel Brug, to address you. Minister Brug, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Blessings, St. Martin. As Minister of VSA, I would like to take this opportunity through this forum to once again extend my heartfelt congratulations and appreciation to all women as we observed International Women's Day on March 8th. The women continue to be the backbone of our communities, our workplace, and our families. We truly value all their contribution and sacrifices they have made. On another topic, the Ministry of Public Health, Social Development and Labour extends its heartfelt congratulations to La Fondation Semana Dominicana for organizing a remarkable week of celebration in honor of their 181st Independent Day of the Dominican Republic. A key highlight of this event was the recognition of several individuals whose dedication and service have significantly impacted the Dominican and local community on the island. Among these esteemed honorees was Mr. Angel Morale Jr., a valued staff member of the VSA, who was acknowledged on his outstanding community service in St. Martin. Moving on, the VSA 2025 sport event. The Ministry of Public Health, Social Development and Labour is proud to announce the successful completion of the VSA 2025 sport event, a one-day Olympic-style competition that took place on Thursday, February 27th at the Rahul Elij Sports Complex. This initiative was designed to encourage teamwork on the field, but also in the office, to promote healthy lifestyle, to reinforce the importance of physical activity, and to serve as a positive example for the community of St. Martin. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to all the organizers, facilitators, and participants of their dedication and efforts in making this event possible. Your excitement and teamwork are a testimony to the strength and the unity of the VSA team. Let us continue to lead by example and encourage a healthier lifestyle. Maintaining the course of sharing positive news. On February 28, 2025, the Ministry of VSA was pleased to receive a donation of 30 CPR training dolls from the Bonjour Stagiaire Foundation, a global recognized advocate for medical services around the world, serving the world for over 50 years. It has been one of those organizations that has not hesitated to assist countries all over the world. Their generous donation aligns with the ministry's ongoing mission to enhance preventative healthcare initiatives and equip the public with critical life-saving skills and tools. Training in resuscitation and CPR is a crucial skill that can save lives. It is our intention to not only distribute these CPR dolls to medical professionals or institutions, but also to schools and community organizations that are willing to establish CPR education sessions. Once again, I extend my sincere gratitude to the Foundation for their invaluable support and partnership. Together, we can make strides towards a safer and more prepared and healthier St. Martin. Moving forward, in recognition of the World Social Work Day, the ministry, in particular the Division of Labor Affairs and Social Services, is proud to announce its first Social Worker Symposium under the theme Remembering the Why. This important event will take place on March 18th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Bel Air Community Center. We are inviting all social workers, psychologists, counselors, and other professionals to attend this event. It will serve as a platform to reflect on your purpose, renewing your passion, and engage in meaningful discussion to enhance your impact in our community. The guest speaker will be Shamida Delaney Weeks from the Happy Me Empowerment Services, who will share valuable insights and inspiration. I encourage all professionals in the fields to take part in this enlightening experience as we come together to celebrate and strengthen the vital role you play in the community. You can register online to attend the session. In addition, as Minister of VSA, I am proud to also endorse Protect Next Gen's inspiring initiative, Scars to Stars Youth March of Hope. This uplifting event is a celebration of resilience, empowerment, and the bright future for our youths. This event will take place Saturday, March 15th, starting from 10 a.m. from the Jose Ballpark to the APS parking lot. Over the years, we have seen quite a number of negative elements regarding the youth in our community. This march symbolizes hope, transformation, and the power of community support. I encourage everyone to come out and stand with our young people and be part of this movement. I truly believe we can create a better future and a brighter future for our young people if we act now. In conclusion, I had the privilege also this weekend to participate in a health fair organized by the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Hope Estate in collaboration with the AUC University, and I must say it was a very successful event. I was very pleased, and also the persons that were there were very pleased that the service was being rendered. And I have committed that within short, I will also organize one on behalf of VSR. It is standard that people usually say, if you want to get people to events, you must offer them chicken leg and Johnny cake. However, I would change that with regard to this. I would say that the health fair is free, and it's something with regard to preventative. And I know, based on the turnout that came out on Saturday, that that's enough that was enough for the majority, for a lot of people to come out and support the event and also to check their health. I would like to once again commend and congratulate the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Hope Estate and those of the AUC, the students that volunteered their time for participating and making that event possible. On behalf of VSR, St. Martin is very grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Brug, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Minister of Finance, Marinka Gums, to address you. Minister Gums, you have the floor.
Thank you, Rolika, fellow colleague ministers, members of the press, and the people of St. Martin. Good morning and a blessed day to all. I want to take this opportunity to provide you with important updates on several key matters. While much of the work being done may not always be visible to the public, I want to make it very clear that significant progress is being done or is being made behind the scenes. Today, I will touch on some of the key developments that are currently underway. AOV legislation meant to provide our seniors with the much-needed tax relief. I would like to provide an update on the AOV legislation being worked on with the intent of providing relief to our seniors, which remains a top priority for me. I have consistently stated my commitment to ensuring relief for our elderly who are in great need of financial alleviation. I know several MPs would be very happy to hear this update, and particular MP York will be pleased as he has been diligent in requesting updates during parliamentary meetings since I made the announcement that I will be bringing this legislative change to provide relief to our seniors. The draft legislation is near completion. However, we were awaiting underlying data to support the law and demonstrate its positive impact on seniors to finalize the draft. The primary goal is to prevent AOV income from being classified as a taxable source of income. Currently, many seniors cannot survive on their AOV income alone, as it is below the minimum wage, requiring them to seek additional income. However, once they do, their AOV income is added to their total taxable income, resulting in higher taxation. Based on recent data, there are approximately 6,300 seniors, of which more than 85% that are currently being taxed would benefit positively from the proposed changes by falling into a lower tax bracket. The impact is as follows. 823 seniors would move from the 12.5% bracket to zero, making their income completely tax-free. 368 seniors would move from 20% to zero, also making their income completely tax-free. 421 seniors would move from the 20% category to the 12.5%. 365 seniors would move from 26.25% to 20. 277 seniors would move from 33.75% to the 26.25%. 55 seniors would move from 33.75% to 20%. 147 seniors would move from 40% to 33.75%, and 65 seniors would move from the 47.5% to the 40% category. This legislation will bring significant relief to many seniors, and I want to emphasize that data-driven decision-making is key to implementing effective legislative changes. While the full legislative trajectory still needs to be followed, I wanted to assure the public that work is progressing diligently in the background. I will continue to provide updates as the process advances. Tourist tax. Another key legislative initiative is the tourist tax. And as promised, I will continue to keep the public informed. Together with the Minister of TIAT and the Minister of VSA, I met with the SER to address their concerns and discuss their questions. It was a productive and positive meeting, and we look forward to receiving their formal advice soon. Once the SER's recommendations are received, we will assess which aspects will be incorporated, make necessary adjustments, and proceed with the next step in the legislative process, which is the review by the Council of Advice. In the meantime, while the legislative process is ongoing, I am also focusing on implementation, as we do not intend to wait until the law is finalized to begin planning for its execution. Both the legislative framework and the operational implementation have my full attention. I would like to remind the public that the tourist tax remains a top priority for me, as it is key to implementing broader tax reforms. Its successful implementation will enable me to follow through on my commitment to reducing profit tax and making the much-needed adjustments to wage tax rates or tax brackets, providing relief to the working people of St. Martin. The data for these key legislative adjustments are also being collected to be analyzed. As I have continuously emphasized, the working people of St. Martin cannot continue to bear the financial burden alone. It is essential that we establish a fairer tax structure that allows for sustainable revenue generation while easing the tax pressure on hardworking individuals. Digitalizing income tax filing. While the digital tax system has been delayed due to the retendering process, I want to reassure the public that we are still making progress. A key improvement we are working on is the digital submission of income tax return. Even though we may not finalize this in time for the May 31st, 2025 income tax filing deadline, I have stressed the importance of moving forward regardless, even if it is introduced at a later date. We must get out of the Stone Age, not only for the taxpayers' convenience, but also for our tax employees who are still required to manually process filings, even though businesses can submit their taxes online. This redundant system is prone to errors and inefficiencies, making modernization essential. Just as we successfully implemented CENTU to facilitate vehicle tax payments, I remain committed to modernizing tax administration to improve efficiency and convenience for taxpayers and our hardworking tax employees. To date, CENTU has processed payments demonstrating its effectiveness in streamlining the payment process. Please note that the vehicle tax payment via CENTU was just phase 1. My intention is to expand this payment option further, allowing taxpayers to use CENTU for tax payments in the future. This is part of my commitment to modernizing tax administration, making payments more accessible and efficient for everyone. I will continue to keep you updated on any new developments as we expand and enhance digital payment solutions and digital tax filings for the people of St. Martin. Tax tables 2023, 2024, and 2025. When I took office, there was a backlog in the establishment of tax tables for the years 2023 and 2024, which should have been finalized before the start of those respective years. As Minister of Finance, I consider these tax tables critical, not only for government operations, but also for all businesses on St. Martin, as they ensure accurate payroll processing for businesses and employees, timely and accurate tax collection, which is essential for government revenue, and smooth administration, reducing delays and inefficiencies. In December 2024, the tax tables for 2023 were finalized and published, which is 2 years after the date that they should have been published. By next week, I can confirm the tax tables for 2024 will be published, which is more than a year after they should have been published. The 2025 tax tables will be finalized in the coming months, which is also late, however, could not be made final until the previous years were finalized. This backlog was a priority for me as it directly impacts income tax filing, tax collection, tax returns, payroll systems, and overall financial administration. I remain committed to transparency and will continue to provide updates on these key matters as the goal is to have these tax tables established timely and prior to the start of the respective year. And lastly, Budget 2025. The latest update on the 2025 budget is the letter sent last week to Parliament, which outlines the technical issues relating to the approved amendments. It is encouraging to see that some MPs have changed their stance now that they have more information. Initially, there were claims that the budget submitted was incorrect. But now, some MPs have clarified that the budget itself was not incorrect. Rather, the amendments introduced technical concerns, as stated in last week's press briefing. It is important to highlight that all amendments, whether from the government or individual MPs, had some level of technical issue. While they are classified as technical errors, I would like to reiterate not all legal perspectives agree on the characterization. From government standpoint, we do not consider these issues to be substantive and awaiting an official response from the Parliament to determine the next steps. Conclusion. As Minister of Finance, I remain committed to ensuring transparency, accountability, and efficiency in financial management. I will continue to provide regular updates as we navigate these critical legislative and financial matters. I welcome any questions and look forward to further engagement on these key initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Gums, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Minister of Public Housing, Spatial Planning, Environment, and Infrastructure, Patrice Gums Jr., to address you. Minister Gums, you have the floor.
Good morning, members of the media, those listening and viewing online, colleague ministers. A couple of brief updates from my side. I'd like to clarify some statements made this morning in the press release of the Daily Herald, where it indicates that a stop has been given to Westview. I think it's very important to clarify what actually has been stopped. That is the works related to civil works that were ongoing. That includes the excavation. What's very important to clarify as well is that it's stated as well in the article is that the building permit is already given and approved. And as such, if we have to find a more substantial, we have to find a substantial reason to revoke that building permit. And as such, the building permit itself has not been stopped. It is the civil works that are ongoing that has been stopped due to the fact that they don't have a civil works permit. That does not mean, of course, that the government is not continuing the investigation. That is, of course, ongoing. I want to clarify as well, as stipulated in 28A of the building ordinance, written consent is required before carrying out all major civil works. Civil works, as defined by the building ordinance, includes excavation, leveling, road construction, water management, demolition, tree removal, and the filling in of water. As I stated as soon as I came in as minister and continue to state, that means everyone on St. Martin who is in the middle or beginning construction is required to have a civil works permit. It is not just for large developments, it is everyone who decides to engage in construction. This is something that has not been systematically used and implemented by the ministry. It's something that we have been discussing now for quite several months, as stated before, and going forward, it formed part of our improvements and enhancements to the ministry on the way we operate. Secondly, I'd like to remind everyone that the temporary closure of a section of Ebenezer Main Road. This is particularly in the areas of W.R. Plants Road and J.C. Pop Road. These are the roads just next to and next to that of the MPC school. This is part of the ministry's hillside stabilization project, and the road will be closed until Wednesday, April 9th, 2025. I'd like to remind everybody that this is part of the ministry's response to severe erosion that has been ongoing along the Ebenezer Trench for a number of years. Concerns about this were brought to the government since 2010, with letters submitted in 2020, 2021 related to erosion and cliff face falling. Upon taking office, we found this to be very important to address. We began assessments of the cliffside in August 2024 and completed all studies in February 2025, with interventions beginning last week with the closure this week to facilitate the removal of debris. This, of course, includes, as we know, what happened with the fallen septic and cistern from Valley Estate down into residents in Ebenezer. Again, I want to thank the residents of Ebenezer for their patience and trust in me, my team, and the ministry. And of course, as we begin to address these long-standing issues, they will, of course, cause some inconvenience, and for that, we do apologize. Finally, as relates to the National Gazette, I'd like to remind everyone that you can exercise your democratic right to review permits approved by the ministry's permit department. As part of our commitment to transparency and public participation, we encourage residents to stay informed about developments in their community. Approved permits are published bi-weekly, so that's every other week, in the National Gazette, accessible through the government's official website. As citizens, you have a 6-week period to submit objections to permits granted. Objections must be submitted in writing and addressed to the Ministry of ROMI. We encourage everyone to exercise this right to ensure active participation in decision-making process, and encourage the continued development of our nation. For more information, please contact the Ministry of ROMI at romi-permits@stmartingov.org. You can find directions to access the National Gazette on my Facebook page, as well as the Ministry of ROMI's page. This will be uploaded shortly after the press briefing. With that, we've come to the end of notices, and we thank you and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Minister Gomes, for your opening remarks. If you just joined us, you are watching the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, March 12, 2025. We now move over to the question and answer session, and as the only member of the media here, I will allow Mr. Eamon Lee of Island 92 Radio to pose his questions.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ministers. So we're going to do kind of a lightning round today, since I'm the only one here. So if I could start with the Minister of Finance. I'll try and keep my questions short so we can go through a bunch of them. First, a clarification. You mentioned that you're waiting for a response from Parliament as to next steps.
Yes.
Next steps, does that mean that budget may or may not have to go back to Parliament to be debated and approved again, or what does that mean?
To be totally open with you, I need to know what, based on the letter that was sent off by the Prime Minister and myself last week, what they are suggesting. There's a lot of statements being made as to what possibilities exist. However, I need to wait on Parliament to be able to answer that question clearly. I really don't know what we're going to do in terms of if it's fully to be redone, which I really don't think, due to the fact that this is just basically technical issues with the budget amendments. So I don't see a whole redo of the budget in question.
But does that mean that right now then you're operating on the 2024 budget until you have clarity?
Technically.
Technically, yes. Okay. Soul Beach, does the funding fall under a subsidy ordinance? How has that been approved? Because was that in the 2025 budget also? Can you tell us which line item that came out of in terms of where it was paid?
Soul Beach was part of my colleague Minister Tiat's initiative. And what was done was it was actually paid out from the 2024 budget post.
From which line item? Do you know?
It was, according to my understanding, marketing.
Marketing. So we've been in discussions with some of the hotels, and apparently the time frame when Soul Beach is scheduled to happen, many of the hotels are reporting that they already have very good occupancy. So how is government going to gauge whether the investment of $500,000 was a net benefit for the country? How will you measure that?
Mr. Lee, that question, in all honesty, I would want, if you don't mind, having to pose it directly to the Minister of Tiat, since this is all her her brainchild initially, and she would have more data as to occupancy rates, you name it, in terms of who would be coming in, etc. So I would really want that question to be posed to her.
Okay. Last week we talked about whether government has a target budget in terms of how much ideally you believe government needs to operate. And you said you'd get back to us with a number.
Yeah, and I can get back to you. So your question last week posed, a target. And given a ballpark, I would say between 600 million to 700 million. Considering a number of factors, we would need to consider all vacancies being filled. We would need to consider the function books being updated, new salaries, the structure, salaries being indexed on a yearly basis. Those components definitely have to be taken into consideration. You also mentioned last week that several ministries come to me specifically as it relates to the fact that they don't have sufficient budget. But I do want to emphasize, and what I did not say last week and I'm going to say today, is the fact that there are other mechanisms besides the budget to which several ministries can go to for funding. That's number one. And number two, we also need to take into consideration the fact that we have CapEx, and over the years we have seen where CapEx were not utilized neither. So I think all of those things being considered, we have to take into consideration. However, to conclude the statement on this ballpark figure of 600 to 700 million, I want to say this will be with full revenue being higher, of course, and that of the expenses being lower, for us to being comfortable, and that's the word I want to use today, comfortable and being able to have a profit to reinvest into the country.
Okay. But yet when you talk about the tourist tax, you mentioned that it's going to generate extra revenue, but then you said that with that revenue, you would then give reductions on profit and wage tax. So isn't that contradictory? If you're looking to increase your budget, if you raise one tax and then drop another, isn't that an issue?
The reason why the concentration is to look at reducing wage tax as a possibility and also profit tax is because, like I stated too in my statement, we have to not put the burden solely on. And in this mechanism of having tourist tax implemented, this is one way of that relief.
Okay. In conversations with the SHTA, their estimates are that the uncollected revenue from Airbnbs that don't pay their appropriate taxes in the neighborhood of $6 million. You had mentioned that you were going to form a committee to look into it. Has there been any progress made on that?
I did take the advice of the SHTA. SHTA have been very a big proponent as us trying to find a solution where this Airbnb situation is concerned. Unfortunately, to date, no committee have been formalized as yet, but we do intend to do so, and SHTA will be a part of that that committee for sure.
Do you agree with the number, the estimate that they've thrown out? That
we would have to see. We definitely would have to take a look at that.
So one question as well, if you have a foreign owner of a condominium who does not have a local company incorporated, what's the process for them to get a crib number in order to be able to pay revenue taxes?
I understand, and don't quote me too much, but I do understand that it's very easy to get a crib number. That's not an issue. As for you not being local or not international, it's not an issue in you actually getting a crib number. But allow me to investigate more, Mr. Lee, and then I can come back to you on that answer.
Because my understanding actually is the opposite, that if you're not a resident here and don't have a local company, that you cannot get a crib number.
I didn't get that. I didn't pick that up in our meetings, but I'll definitely get back to you on that.
Okay. And last question for you. Tax assessments. If you go to almost any apartment building here, you will see the mailboxes just stuffed with assessments. And also with your former hat in terms of the post office. I understand that when assessments are made, there's number one, the date that the letter was actually made. There may be then a different date that's actually put on the letter itself. So in other words, the dates are not necessarily the same. And then they're dropped off at the post office in bulk. And then there's a stamp on the envelope. And what people have found is that they receive assessments with a 2-month period to object, and they actually receive the assessments after the 2-month period. And then there's a debate about which 2 months from which date. So can you tell us, it would be reasonable that it's the date you actually received the assessment. But
Correct.
can you tell us what is the official policy?
So there isn't necessarily an official policy. What I do know, based on my previous hat, a date is generated from the tax office. The post office would then get it in bulk, and then it has to then generate a new date to be released. That has to happen within 2 days of receiving. Okay. That being done, it goes out. Persons either look at their mail truthfully, basically, or others just don't. And that's why we can see in several locations where mailboxes or wherever is really filled with mail because they see that nice logo, that colorful logo, and they just don't want to open, not knowing that it could actually be a refund. Nevertheless, what I would state, it would be that date based on the letter, not the stamp from the post office, because that would be the date that you receive it. And any questions that persons would have for that, they would have the opportunity to go and object if necessary, But I think first and foremost is the matter of why they got an assessment. So we need to look at those aspects. Secondly, actually having you realize, please go and take your mail, open your mail, see what it's about, because at the end of the day, taxes have to be paid. And someone would have to pay them. And then thirdly, an object where necessary.
So again, just for clarification, 2 months from the date that it was postmarked on the envelope is what you believe would be the reasonable
That's what I
date.
believe, correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
For the Minister of Justice. Good morning. Again, congratulations on the road controls. Every article that's posted by the KPSM shows that they're revealing bulletproof vests, guns, drugs, all kinds of things. And I assume the intention is to keep it up. Will you also look at off-peak hours, not just, daytime hours? What are your plans in terms of maintaining a level of the road controls?
So the intention is indeed that these would continue and not just be, now at the beginning of the year or, we're checking road tax. As I've said, I really want us to go back to a place where we recognize that there are laws in this country that we've adopted and that we need to adhere to and that we need to enforce. And from the justice side, it's my job to enforce. So the idea is, of course, to keep up the controls all throughout the entire calendar year, and of course, then staggered based on manpower. We also have to take into account how many cruise ships we have in port on a day, how many events we have, and of course, the event calendar is very, very busy from now until June. But we do intend to keep those up. And I believe last week we did have some controls in the evening hours from 12 midnight to about 4 in the morning. So we're trying to, of course, stagger these and keep everyone on their feet, because you don't want to have set times either that everyone knows, oh, let me avoid that area because the police are controlling. But we do intend to continue the controls.
In conversation with representatives of the private sector, one suggestion that was made was for basically a dedicated team, a roaming team. So one vehicle, 2 officers that is just sort of dedicated to vehicle controls. Is that something you would consider? I mean, Again, I see now vehicles where license plates are blacked out. You can't even see the numbers on the license plates. Forget the window tinting.
Yeah, it's funny. This morning I was coming from the gym, and a car passed me in Pelican where I saw it was a super old license plate from maybe like 10 years ago, and I thought at that moment I wished I was above Paul that I could have pulled them over myself, but no, I think we do. There's a lot that slips through the cracks, but I do want to, of course, commend the officers for the work that they're able to do so far. Again, I think they're really doing their best and working under the circumstances that they can. In a shift, we don't have that many patrols out either. So, it is a matter of having to distribute resources. But of course, going into this more busy event season on the island, we will have reinforcements from our Kingdom partners. So that may give more flexibility for us to be able to show up in different ways as well.
But could you finance a dedicated team, for example, from the crime fund? Is that a possibility?
We would have to look into the specifics and the legalities of it, and see how we would be able, because it would be an operational cost of government in that sense. So if we did it as a project, and this is just my legal brain running as you mentioned it, but I could look into it. But there may be an issue there because we would be funding operations of government, which is not what the crime fund is meant for.
Okay. On survey, it looks like about 25% of cars have heavily tinted windows, even the front windows. Are the police properly equipped? Do they have tint meters? Do they have breathalyzers? Do they have the proper equipment for doing those controls?
So when it comes to tint meters, we will be, or at least we're busy in the process of ordering additional ones and recalibrating so that we can go out and do the tint controls. And I'd like to remind everyone now again that the current national decree stipulates that your front driver windows, passenger and driver windows, can be up to 70% tinted. So that means 70% of light can come through. And then your back windows, 40%. And then, of course, you can have that little piece of 15 centimeters on the front windshield. So we will be enforcing those. And, we have also been receiving requests for tint exemptions, and we've also been looking at those in accordance with the established policy. And we will be republishing the policy and kind of revamping it. And again, this is just a safety and security concern. And I know it's hot. That's the discussions that, I hear from people telling me, yeah, but it's so hot outside. But we need to think about the broader issues of road safety. So we will be controlling those once, of course, we then have the tools to be able to enforce and to measure the amount of tint. And when it comes to breathalyzers, there's actually no provision in the law that allows for breathalyzing. And I know that discussion was held in Parliament in terms of, would we be willing to change the law? And I think I remember giving them the answer of where exactly that was in our traffic ordinance, that we would be able to make an amendment to allow for that.
So for clarification, if I understand, that means that nobody actually could be arrested or fined for drunk driving because there's no mechanism to verify that? Is that correct?
I think the only mechanism would be that then you had to come and give a blood test to then, of course, measure blood alcohol level in that way.
Which they could refuse.
I would need to check the specifics on it to see.
Okay. And last set of questions has to do with fines. So when you're stopping vehicles and you find infractions and you issue fines, number one, are the fines enough? Are they enough of a deterrent? How much money have you raised? And is it Justice who raises the money? So what's the collection process on that? And wouldn't it make sense, now that people are renewing their license plates, that those fines perhaps go there and you can't renew unless all fines are paid? Some mechanism like that. Can you explain what is the current process?
I'm looking into a way that we can be more effective in how we're fining and collecting fines. But the way it goes, the police issues a fine. That person can, of course, then gets, a court date. You can object to the fine. And so there's an entire legal process that follows. Once that fine becomes final, it ends up at the public prosecutor's office. And then that's where we kind of see that things get disconnected, because a lot of people don't have a proper address registered. So we have a hard time finding these folks in order to be able to find them. However, one of the things that I've been looking at, and it's not a 2025 solution, but it is a solution in discussions looking into perhaps the 2026 budget. For example, in Curacao, at the public prosecutor's office, there's a separate department. It's called Pagabobut. And it's maybe 6 people that all they do is collect fines. They make sure that they are enforcing and doing that. And if you look at the 6 FTEs, they're easily earning that back in the amount of fines that they're collecting. So that's something that I would like to have a discussion with my colleague, Minister of Finance. I see her writing, so she's going to remind me. But it's obviously it's not something that we would be able to do now. It would have to do with us increasing the budget of the public prosecutor's office and then finding ways to be more effective. They would have to hire an extra bailiff and things like that to really go out and do that. So that's where we see a little bit of the disconnect. I think currently, off the top of my head, we are collecting about 30% of the fines that are issued.
And for littering fines, is that the police department that's also responsible for enforcing that? Or
do you know for littering? And I know police. I'm seeing police here also, but I know that we're also all very busy here within the Council of Ministers. Currently now we have a national ordinance on administrative sanctions, which has just been lacking in the implementation decrease for the separate ministries. So we've all been working diligently. I know at least that Justice has been having discussions with the Ministry of VSA and the Ministry of Romy to look for and also with TIAT, and to look at how we can then implement administrative fines, which may be a lower threshold and an easier way for us to collect and also not have to have BAV-pollers, like they could just be civil servants issuing those fines.
Thank you. So,
Yes.
Minister of Romy. So perhaps then, just to tag along to that question, you spend a lot of money every year on contracts for roadside cleaning.
Mm-hmm.
So wouldn't it make sense to try and offset some of those costs by recovering fines? I mean, it is sad that you drive, you see people cleaning, and then the next week there's garbage on the side of the roads already. Is that something, again, that you would support, and how could you facilitate that?
Yes, so I stated this already in budget debate in January. Actually, something that we're working on. There is already a draft national decree that has to be corrected and amended again to actually allow for the staff of ROMI, so inspections, Nature Foundation, for example, to be able to actually issue fines. Currently, what I think Minister Justice is alluding to is that because only the police and those who are BAFPOL certified can issue fines, that means it has to go through the criminal process, through the prosecutor's office, which becomes a bit tedious to do. If you're trying to collect 50 guilders, they want administration for that. So bringing that back in-house via sort of administrative fines is something that I completely support. I stated it several times. I mentioned it here in press briefing as well. We are working on that LB. It should be finalized relatively soon, and then it has to all go back to Parliament for ratification. So it's completely something I support, something that I definitely need. I think that's also going to help empower the inspection department to address such things like sewage, running sewage, littering, which really should fall under us as we're part of the environment. So to give the ministry a bit more teeth when it comes to enforcing our own legislation as well. So completely on board with that idea.
Okay, great. So I read the report, most of the report, about the resettlement efforts here by the dump. I understood that it's a requirement from World Bank in order for them to finance the work on the landfill that people need to move. But in the report, it was really quite clear that most, if not all, I believe, were not there with basically the legal rights to be there. Mm-hmm. In the end, it costs the recovery program $12 million in terms of resettling those people. But this is not the only example of people using land that does not belong to them. So is Romy learning a lesson from this and looking at other land where people are there without the proper authorizations or permits, or is that something you're looking
I think
at?
Indeed, I think if we have not learned some of the hardest lessons in the last couple of years, we won't learn again. The reality is it's enforcement. It's impossible to understand, to me, beyond politics, how a illegal settlement happened on government-owned land in the middle of Phillipsburg. over years. If it happens up in the hills or out in the countryside, which we no longer have, that's one thing. But the center of Phillipsburg is a different story. I think we've also seen it recently where there was a fire that happened in the cul-de-sac area involving illegal structures. We see it in several other areas where, for example, people have built illegally. And it has a lot of different issues. It puts a strain on the electricity grid. It puts a strain on services for ambulance and fire that can't assist them. But it also puts into the question, where are we going with affordable housing? And that's actually one of the things I've been focusing on, because it's always very nice to say you're going to knock down illegal housing. The reality is they exist for two reasons. One, the persons are undocumented, or the persons can't actually afford what's currently in the market. So one of my focuses, because I think the issue when it comes to persons who are undocumented is outside of my scope of mandate, but equally as important, what I'm focusing on is affordable housing. One of the key things that we've been addressing is the housing policy, defining that there's a massive gap between what is currently in the market and what we're seeing on the front page every day. And one of the key things that we have to do is make sure that we actually have affordable housing and social housing. We've had a study done, well, in meetings that we've had, basically, a lot of the housing that currently exists is actually being used for people who don't need to be in social housing. For example, in areas as Dutch Quarter and Belvedere, how do you stream people out that need to be in different types of housing? The reality is most of them are there because they can't afford it or because it's not properly enforced. So my focus has been and will continue to be on providing affordable housing, because in that way we can ensure that we don't have these pop-ups of sort of unregulated housing because we can't actually afford what's currently available to them in the market.
Okay. My last questions are for the Minister of VSA. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Minister, my question's related to sexual harassment, in particular on the job site. I understand that there's been some issues within government, and so number one, what's government's plan to address that in terms of trainings or informing what's appropriate and what's not? But on the private sector side, I've also spoken to a couple people who've encountered sexual harassment on the job. And then you start running into our employment laws where somebody has to make a complaint, and then how far will it go? Because is it something that somebody can be dismissed for urgent reasons, or is it something where you have to issue a warning letter? And so what I'm hearing from private sector is that employees are uncomfortable bringing up the topic because they feel as if there won't be sufficient enough of a resolution, and that they will end up having exposed themselves to harassment or difficulties on the job. So number one, in the government workplace, how are you addressing it? And on the private sector side, how are you addressing it?
Okay. Thank you very much for your question. With regard to the first part, with regard in the government workplace, there have been cases reported within VSA, and what has happened is that the management team has already met, and they have already decided that we, as VSA, we're going to start to put a policy in place for what is lacking right now. So that's something that's already been worked on. With regard also to the private sector, of course, any person that feels that they're being sexually harassed, they have the right also to file complaints at the Labor Department, but also at the police department as well, because it ventures into that direction as well. And the fear that you talk about is something that has also been brought to my attention, and we are busy trying to see how we can, how we can make it more easier, and also more how we can make it more easier for individuals to make complaints without being targeted after they're making the complaints for their rights. And in addition to that, we are also going to, because you also have the fact that a lot of persons don't know what to do, so we have already started to hold seminars and sessions informing individuals of their rights, so basically employers of what their responsibilities are, and also employees of what their rights are and the actions to be taken. So we've already had one, I think last month we had one session, and there are more sessions to follow as well. And these sessions would also be not only for English speakers, but also for the different nationalities within our community.
Thank you, Minister Bruch. Thank you, Mr. Lee, for your questions. The question and answer session has been closed, and any further questions can be sent to the Minister's Cabinet in writing. Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, radio listeners, and online viewers, this brings us to the end of the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, March 12, 2025. For rebroadcast, tune into stmartingov.org, St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM, Tel TV Plus Channel 15, the official Facebook page of the Government of St. Martin, and YouTube channel, Government of St. Martin. For video on demand, log on to the Government of St. Martin's YouTube channel. On behalf of the Department of Communication and the Government of St. Martin, I'm Rolika Roach and wishing you a pleasant day further.